In the past couple of videos, I demonstrated the creation of a basic assembly file containing a few simple parts. And throughout these videos, I mentioned several times the importance of both fully defining your model and of using the Fusion timeline feature to go back and modify the steps used to create your model, rather than creating new steps, so that when you need to make an update, the update will cleanly process through the rest of your model and then push into other higher level assemblies that use that model. So in this video, I would like to go through how to use Fusion's parameters feature to make this even easier. What the parameters feature does is lets you build a table of values that you can reference both in sketch dimensions or in different 3D operations. So that way, if you ever need to make a change to a value, you can just edit it in the table, and then all the sketches and features that reference it will automatically update with that new value. So before I even bring up Fusion, let's start by creating a quick sketch of what we want the part to look like and some of the critical dimensions that we're going to need. So let's say we're making a bracket that's going to have some sort of square base area, a couple of mounting holes, and then another mounting hole centered below it that would have some diagonals and an arc around it. So looking at this, could pick out a couple key dimensions. We'll have this width of our mounting area, so maybe that's 4 inches. We'll have a height, maybe that's 1 inch. So now we have some numbers in mind. Let's go over to Fusion and make the parameter table that we need to make this model. So in Fusion, I've already opened up a blank document and named it according to the practices I discussed in some of the earlier videos. So I have a document for a subassembly. I'll copy the name, start a new component in this assembly, and we'll call this part number 1, and we'll just name it part 1. So up here on the modify panel, you can see this. There's this button, change parameters. Looks like a FX. This will bring up the parameters table. You might see this button in a few other places on the different tabs, including once you start creating a sketch, it shows up there as well. So I'll undo that. All the buttons will bring up the same parameter table. So let's pull up the parameters table. You can see now there's no parameters, and you can use this plus to create a new one. So the first parameters we needed were the width and height of that mounting area. So for the first one, for the name, we'll put in mount width. We can select the units. So if we wanted this to be metric or an angle instead of inches, we could change it here. I'll just leave it in inches for this. And these don't have to be the same throughout your document. So if it makes sense to define some parameters in metric and some in imperial, this is an easy way to keep track of it all, since Fusion can do all the conversions for you. So inches, or 4 inches wide. We'll make another one. Yeah, height is 1 inch. So now we have our list of parameters that we can reference by name in our sketch. A few things before I close this table, you can see you can sort by the different columns. So if you get a long list of parameters and need to sort them alphabetically to find a certain one you're looking for. You can also favorite parameters. So say the thing you think you're going to be changing most often was that the diameter of that main bolt. You could click on the star to favorite it, and then it would stay in this top list as well, so you can access it quickly. So I'll close out of this dialog. We're already on a part and activated, so I'll create a sketch. Let's do it on the right side. Now I'll start drawing that part we sketched before. So now let's go and add dimensions using those parameters we just created. So our mounting area had a width, and we named it Mount W. So you can see you start typing mount and it'll pop up a list of recommendations from your parameters. So I'll select mount width, hit enter. Do the same thing here, mount height. Okay, then before we position this, let's get these locked to the mounting area. So let's say these should be halfway on this dimension and then the same distance from the end as they are from the side. We can do that using the parameter we created for the height. So selecting that center point and the side, we can type in mount height divided by 2. Okay, so this went off center. I'll just correct that with a construction line. So I'll draw a line from the midpoint here to the center of this, make it a construction line, and then apply a horizontal or a vertical constraint to it, which will hold the midpoint of the mounting area directly above the center of this circle. So now you can see this part's all defined. The only thing left is this radius. Let's define that based on the size of this bolt. So we'll call it bolt diameter times 1.5. Should give us a nice size. Okay, so now we have our sketch fully defined. Every dimension in this uses those parameters that we created. And we can pull up the parameters dialog right now and try changing these. So maybe this bracket's too tall. This shouldn't have been 4. This should have been 3. I can go change my bolt position to 3, and immediately the sketch will update. Or let's say we want to make these mounting holes bigger. We can change our mount hole 0.375, and it'll update both holes at once. Okay, so now we have our sketch fully defined. Let's finish the sketch. And then before we go to extrude it, let's actually create another parameter for how thick we want this plate to be. So I'll go in parameters, new, plate thickness, 1/4 inch. So now I can go extrude, select my 2 profiles, and instead of typing in a number, type in plate thickness. And parameters can be used in almost any feature you get from these menus. So let's say you wanted to round off some of these corners. You could select those and put in a parameter there. So let's say that's the mounting area height divided by 4. And so there's a part that's fully defined with parameters. And you can pull up the parameters from the 3D view as well, change different aspects to see how it updates. Even things that were only defined in the sketch, you can just update right from here. So you can see how this makes it very quick to go and change your file and update it without having to go locate where your sketch is on the timeline and reopen it. So now my part's done. I'll go ahead and group these and then reactivate my top level assembly. Now, since the last few videos, there's actually a Fusion update that changed the behavior of the grounding feature. So if you notice right now, if you try to drag this, you can't move it. It has this little anchor symbol. When you create a new part, if you right click on it, it's automatically grounded to parent. So this part is locked in place relative to your top level assembly. In this case, this is how we want this to behave. We want it locked in place, so I'll just leave it alone. But now let's say we want to make a copy of this part and constrain it a certain distance out in front of this. So you can copy parts by clicking on this and then copy paste or Control C, Control V. So I'll copy that and then move it out. So this creates a copy, or this creates another instance of the part. So you can see on the timeline, it just added a copy feature, and then any changes you make to the sketch or the extrude or the parameters will affect both of these instances the same. The second one, it also automatically has this unground from, or is automatically grounded to parent, indicated by this little anchor. So we can't drag it. When I pasted it, I moved it over so I could see it. If I'd moved it exactly how much I wanted and typed in a number there, I could just leave it. Generally, I still would prefer it to be constrained with a joint to this part, though, so I can edit that dimension easily. So I'll actually go right-click on this one, unground it from parent, so now it's free to move again, and then I'll create my joint. So let's say we want to line up this top center with this top center and offset it by, let's say 4 times the plate thickness. I can just type right in here 4x plate thickness. So that's how I like to go about most of my part design, actually, is I'll start by laying out a big table of parameters with everything I know, and try to get as many things as possible based on parameters where it makes sense. And then as I go, if I think of a new parameter I want, just pull this up and add it in. So that way, if everything is well-defined and fairly simple in the timeline, you never need to go back and edit the timeline, but you can edit anything about your model right from here.